Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Tree Actions, the Human Forestry Podcast. With me, as always, is my trusty co-host, counterpart, technical advisor, and producer, Tony. Tony Trestle. How's you doing, Tony?
Good morning, everyone.
And, I'm kind of excited about today's show. I'm actually excited because this is going to be a first for us on Tree Actions because our guest today reached out sending a text. I think it was on Messenger. I can't remember how it was, but he texted me and said, "Hey, you should have."
I think Instagram.
Instagram. That's what it was. You should have. I love the show. I'd like to hear. I think it was Johnny you mentioned, and I said, "Well, we have had a couple of Johnnies. I think they might have been on." You're like, "Oh yeah, actually they are on the show." And in a roundabout way, I said, "Well, maybe he'd like to be on the show," and he was very excited to say, "Heck yeah." So with us today from the great state of Utah is our first fan guest, Joshua Burr.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
I guess we don't normally do that much of an introduction, so I'll leave it at that because we've kind of developed a trademark of just getting into the question, and we don't drag out introductions on this show. So I'll just go ahead, and if you would please share with us your first time that you felt a connection to a tree or trees.
The house I grew up in had a silver maple and a sugar maple, and I remember like my dad boosted me up into the tree, and then at some point he tied me a little rope ladder with loops, and it was like a hemp. It I remember it as being like a really skinny 3-strand. I don't know if they make a rope that's like braided less than 3-strand, but it was like a hemp style rope. And yeah, he tied that to like the bottom branch just so I could get up into the trunk, and that was that. I was above the roof line and knocking dead branches out, and I just remember being like, it'd be cool if I could like get paid for this somehow. Like, I'm good at the climbing thing, and it seemed like someone might have wanted to pay somebody to take dead branches out of a tree. We lived kind of on a farm property, so it's not something we like needed or ever had hired out. So yeah, and my mom said the first thing I climbed was out of the crib, and I've been climbing ever since. So the trees were just on the property, and they were tall. They were above the roof line. I mean, they were a good 50 plus feet. I ended up later full circle working for a company in the town I grew up in, and cutting down that childhood tree. It was the first day with this new company I was with, and
Oh wow!
yeah, we showed up to my childhood home and cut the tree down. It was super wild.
Wow! Did that have mixed feelings for you? How was that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I remember I put spikes on, and probably I was like, afterwards I was like, well, that was dumb. Like, didn't need those. Climbed it like without spikes for many, many years. Like, I just, out of the rhythm and routine, I was like, yep, like, it's a removal, spikes. It was in decline and had big dead branches, like big old dead spots in it. So it was like very much on its way out. But yeah, definitely had all sorts of like
Right.
what do they call it? Like Monday morning quarterback. Like, after I cut it down, I was like, could have done that differently or whatever it be. I was like, maybe I could have just like tipped it over and didn't need to climb it. I'm like, well, no, of course it needed to be climbed one last time.
And what kind of tree was it? I didn't hear you say.
That one was the sugar maple.
It was a sugar maple. Oh wow, okay. And I also you're just a little breaking up a little bit. I think the recording will be fine. But where was this tree?
Oh, Oxford, Michigan, the town I grew up in.
Oh, it was in Michigan.
Yep.
Okay. So not where you are today.
Nope.
So how was it that you ended up finding a tree company or finding your way into the actual getting paid for tree work? Was it someone you knew or?
Yep, that I have my mom to credit. She was working at a certain type of doctor's office. I'm not exactly sure. She's always been in like kind of office medicine and like that administrative office type role. And so someone just kind of
Yep.
came in and was a regular there, and he just was saying that he was looking for employees, and I was 16 at the time, and my mom was like, "Well, like my son's looking for a job, like." He likes being outside, and neither one of us knew what we were getting signed up for. She came home and was like, I might have found you a lead doing tree work. I'm like, I'm not really sure what that means. Like maybe bucket trucks? Like I don't know. But yeah, so I think I had to wait a little bit till I like might have been 15 turning 16 or turning 17, something around there. And yeah, they hired me on. I was with them for 3 years. Um, but through them, they Bartlett Arborist Supply has which is totally separate.
Hmm.
I'm sure you're familiar, like it's separate from Bartlett,
Yeah.
the tree experts. So Bartlett Arborist Supply was about
Yeah.
40 minutes away from me in Michigan. So they had a two
Okay.
day open house every year, and it was free, and they catered a good lunch, and they had instructors come in, and I'm sure they had
Okay.
deals. I'm sure they had deals on equipment too, and so Adam, the first company I worked with, AWD was his company. Um, Adam would always go there to maybe learn some things and grab some new pole saw blades or whatever it be, and that's where I saw like a real professional for the first time. And then so I got introduced to them, and then they hosted Tree Jam Camp, and Tree Jam Camp was really like the a major turning point. You're familiar with that one?
No, I don't know about tree jam. Is it in Michigan then, or?
Oh yeah, so Tree Jam Camp was a independent competition hosted by Bartlett Arborist Supply, and that got another one you need to have on Scotty Olson, you know?
Uh huh. Yeah. 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 Good call.
Yeah, Tree Jam Camp got guys like Scotty Olson, Jeff Inman,
Uh huh.
Tengi Bernard. Me, when I was like 17, realizing that Tengi came from out of the country he was kind of on a circuit at the time. He was hitting multiple competitions, but that was very like inspiring to me, knowing that it was more than just the blue collar tree work. Like it was something.
Yep. So the it was a type of competition.
Yeah, just like the regular ISA, it was just independent.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So Tony, are you familiar with that one? I didn't.
The name rings a bell, but I don't. I never attended or anything. But it does kind of like when you said.
That's awesome. Do they still do it, Josh?
No, they haven't done it in about 5 or more years. But
Oh,
Bull
okay.
Hammerstrand was another one.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
She would regularly come out to that.
Okay. Interesting. And where that's in Michigan and what town?
That one was, we would say, up north somewhere. I'm not sure, just North Michigan.
Okay, so it moved around. Like it wasn't always in the same place.
It was at a campground,
Oh,
and
okay.
the people who won every year, they got to like, I think they might have planted a tree, but they definitely got to like name a tree there was something with, I was very new and young, but uh yeah, they got something to do with like naming a tree when they won the overall competition.
Oh, wow. Cool. Well, that's interesting. Yeah. And it's funny, you know, how many people are curious, how many people get their career kind of takes a sort of a pivot when they get involved with competition and get exposed to I think
Hmm.
it's partly the comp, but I think a lot has to do with meeting other people that are very interested in climbing and passionate about it, and it really opens your eyes, especially when it broadens your scope, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, like I remember meeting Jeff Inman, and he was happy to share anything with me, but he was so many levels above me at the time. I like couldn't even I saw a Taz Love for the first time from Jeff, and I just remember being like, what is that? That's really cool. It goes on the rope straight on, so it can go on a tensioned line, and it's a multi-sender. It can go up and down. Like, that was, and I saw Kevin Bingham for the first time there, and before then,
Uh-huh.
I think I'd heard that, like, the rope wrench and the rope runner were a thing. So I didn't meet Kevin at the time, but like, oh hey, there's Kevin Bingham over there. Like, that was like, those were all very um, big moments looking back.
Yeah, yeah. And were you fortunate enough to win?
Not Tree Jam Camp, but I've won Michigan twice.
Okay, okay. Well, yeah, it sounds like you've got the tree bug fully in your veins when it comes to the competitions and climbing. No, you mentioned that you listen and you like the history. I'm just curious about that. Like, what do you find interesting about that, or what is it like? Not everybody's a history buff, but we do kind of, we do recognize that we kind of do. Part of it is kind of keeping a legacy, or there's some stories out there that people can go listen to. Uh, what about it is it that you like, or why do you enjoy that?
I think the fundamentals are very lacking as an industry, so I think the where this stuff came from is very important.
Interesting. And why do you think that is? Why do you think that, like, and when you say it's lacking, how do you see that in the industry in your experience?
Well, I'm very thorough, like when it comes to ANSI and stuff, but we don't, in the States especially, we lack like enforcement. But I don't, like Tim says, I don't care about why. Like, I don't care about the rule. I care about freaking why it's there. You guys talk about that. You guys talk about the freaking Pete guy. Like, the rule became a
Yeah,
thing because of Pete. Like, that's important.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Pete was a good friend, and that was definitely a pivotal point in my career. When he was killed, and there's a lot of questions that had to get answered, or well, a lot of questions were brought up in one's mind. How could it happen, and all that sort of stuff, especially with someone that knew he was a pretty smart guy. He might not have had as much experience as some people had because he just dabbled in tree work and he loved it, but he was actually a professor of physics, right? But he came to a training program, and we realized he was correcting us on a lot of our physics content, and afterwards we're like, so how is it, like, who are you? And he was like, well, actually, I'm a professor of physics at Rensselaer Polytechnic. We're like, oh wow, really? When you realize someone in your crowd, someone in your audience, or someone that's a student is eminently higher qualified than you are. Like, I mean, some of us had taken, I don't know if any of us had taken physics even in high school, let alone had a PhD in it at a university. So that's how we got connected with Peter. And, he brought a a massive wealth of knowledge about physics into the tree world for the first time, like in a very precise way with sound, accurate data, and he could answer the tough questions that we'd only felt before. Like, how is it that we busted this 60,000 kilonewton carabiner? Like, we knew there was forces, but we were using little fish scales and stuff to demonstrate, and Pete just blew that wide open, and I think as far as his fatality goes, he would hold responsibility to what happened to him himself. It was just a lot of things came together, unfortunately, that day that led to that fatality. But, the one good thing in Pete's fatality in particular, and I think his fatality and incident actually, I don't know how to put this. I don't know if it's safe to say, like every arborist that has been killed in the line of duty, so to speak, is no one deserves that. No, that shouldn't happen to anybody. But when it happened to Pete, it was a lot of people knew Pete. Uh, you know, he had done a tour in Europe, and so a lot of the Euros knew him. He had been involved at the comps. Had been speaking at the international show, And the phones were ringing all over the place when people started, when everyone found out what happened to him. And it had a real ripple effect because a lot of research was done in different countries because of that. The accident statistics that we now have was, the reason whenever you see those accident statistics, they start at 1991. It's because they keep stats for 10 years. And Pete died in 2000 and 2001. A student by the name of Shane Vosberg at South Dakota State did his master's thesis on occupational health and safety and focused on what the fatalities in arboriculture. And in Washington, they didn't have a category for it. So he went there and he had to go over and over reports, OSHA reports of fatalities, and figure out which ones were arborists. And they had the records going back 10 years. And that's why you always see it starting at 91, because Shane did this in 2001, a year after Pete's fatality. So, even that fact and that they now have a category for arborists was a direct result of Pete's fatality. And it just really opened our eyes to a lot of unhappy truths about the industry, and has really served in some ways to really catalyst a lot of growth and change. And that's the one positive, at least, that came out of it, or many positives have come out of it, out of such a tragedy. But Tony, I don't know, what do when you think back on that whole thing, like if there's such a thing as pre-Pete and post-Pete, like, because that was a pretty pivotal shift in particularly rigging, but also dynamics and tree risk assessment.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, Pete's accident was sort of a, Stanley Longstreth always called it, the perfect
Right.
storm of events, which it was in many respects. But also the aftermath was very similar to that because it affected a lot of people with the ability to do something. Because, oftentimes, you have a friend or a colleague that passes away for whatever reasons, right? And you want to help, right? You don't want the,
Right.
you want to help their family, you want to help something, you want to do something. Well, when Pete had his incident and died, there were a lot of people in a position to do
Right.
something, and they did it. Um, I, I'm not saying it wouldn't have happened if Pete hadn't have died, but I think it got accelerated a little bit, and I think a lot of people put some time and energy into it, and it definitely made a change. I mean, you even look at a
Right.
presentation I've given a number of
Yeah.
times,
Yeah.
and the whole rigging format that we laid out for Arbor Canada New is based on
Yeah.
Pete's,
Yeah.
five ways to reduce force in a rigging system. That's all Peter Dunzelli, you know. So his legacy is lives on a lot, very much. So a lot of people don't see it.
Joshua, did you? It seemed like you got a little bit emotional over that. Was that? Did I read that correctly? Is that because of like, have you experienced something significant? Because it's not, the tree world is one of those places like the military or maybe police force or even firefighting where like almost everybody knows somebody or actually has direct experience. And I'm wondering if that's is that something that you've had experience with, or if I may ask you that.
No, no, I haven't directly, but just I think so often with the lack of, not directly the lack of fundamentals. I mean, I'm sure complacency is a big part of it, but just I think a lot of our injuries are very preventable and fatalities. Like,
Hmm.
I think we have way more than we should as an industry.
Yeah, you'd have a lot of people nodding their heads on that one, and a lot of people have speculated why that is and why it continues to be that way, and it's still, it hasn't really improved. They track that, so, they track it every year, and we stay pretty close to the same amount of fatalities every year. About every 3 days, someone is killed, right? And I've never really heard a real great answer as to why that is completely. A lot of speculation. I don't know, Tony, have you ever thought of, like, of course I know you've thought about it, but what do you think?
Yeah, it's just when you look at the accident statistics, like the numbers, the percentages don't change much. The trends don't change much. The numbers, of course, change. There's more and less, in one category or next, but the top three stays the top three for some obvious reasons, right? Struck bys, falls, and electrocutions. They're there for a reason, but they don't change much. The numbers don't change much. I don't know. that the hazards are constant, but the people keep changing. So I think it's a twofold thing here in the States
Right.
anyway, maybe less so in Canada. But it's a field with high turnover. You do get the occasional weirdo like Josh there that gets into it and just can't leave it, and like Dwayne and I. But a lot of people get into this industry for a couple years and then leave quickly. And then unfortunately, a lot of people don't ever get the chance to leave quickly. Um, had they not been hurt or killed, they might have said, oh, I can't, might have fallen out of it. So I think there's that. I think it's a deceptively easy field. You watch a well-tuned rigging or crane rigging or nice removal or even a good pruning job go well, and it looks easy, but it's not. You know, um, it's like, oh, all you got to do is go up there and cut it. Like, yeah, yeah, that's all you got to do. But it's like I always tell people, it's like tree work's easy, just don't fuck up. Like life is easy, just don't fuck up.
Yeah,
But
I think
that doesn't work, right?
absolutely consequences is a
There's no
word that
detail
comes
about
to
it.
my mind, and a very simple mistake or oversight, that we make all the time as humans can in the tree world. Like, you forget to move your lanyard and you cut it, or you forget, I don't know if any of you have ever done this, but, I've one time in particular, 3/4 through the back cut on taking a top. And I don't even know why I have to say it was a higher power or a divinity or something, because if there's such a thing as angels and all that, which I do believe in, but I just stopped cutting. There was no reason, and I, I don't. I looked up and I was tied in, like into the piece, And if I would have finished it, I, and that was earlier on. I don't know that I even had my lanyard on. I know that I was practicing a double tie, and even if I had, it still would have sucked, right? But if I hadn't, and it was a very startling discovery, and like that's when the old heart starts going boom, 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 right? And of course, very nonchalantly pause and take your lanyard out, or take your climbing line down and retie, like nothing's going wrong, and hoping nobody on the ground notices that. And the top's actually kind of moving, but I can laugh about it now, I guess.
Yeah, it happened to Frank. I think Frank's guy stopped him from cutting the top out that he was tied into.
Oh yeah, like I mean, and on my Facebook page, True Tree Confessions, which I don't post on very often, but John Henriksen shares a story on there that where it happened, and they were throwing sticks at the guy. The guy had the muffs down and everything, and they managed to get his attention just in time. So when I say hoping no one on the ground notices, it's like there is always that, that I don't wouldn't do that now, and I don't know that I didn't share it later, but it's just in that moment, where you're, holy moly, it's just shocking. But that's the kind of thing that I could have just as easily been a statistic, and everyone would have wondered why, and this would have been in the early '90s, like nobody would have. There wasn't even a way to text everybody what happened. This would have a few people would have known. I would have, there'd been a few arborists at my funeral, I'm sure, and all the rest of it. But it just wouldn't have, wouldn't made big news. And no one maybe would have really understood what happened. They would have probably figured it out to see like, oh, it looks like he left his rope in there. But I think that's how these things occur. So simply, and it has to do with, and then you mentioned complacency, Joshua. Like you got to really keep forefront the consequences that exist when you're 50, 60, 80 feet in the air hanging on a rope with a cutting tool. It's just a deadly combination, really. And we do it every day, so you get that complacency, you get used to it. I remember the first time I saw someone taking a top, and they were lanyarded in only with the lanyard, cable core probably, but they were pushing and cutting. Like, so one hand in the saw and a back cut and using the other hand to push. And they did several pieces like that. And I remember at the time noticing how close the chain and the saw was to, the chest, the neck, the arm, and being, man, that looks kind of wild. But then eventually being shown and then doing it, And after a while, there was at one point in time I realized I'm doing it now and not even, it didn't scare me anymore. I didn't even look at it as a risk anymore, right? And I think that kind of happens. And it's important to remind ourselves, or I don't know, what do you think about how can you keep that in your forefront? How do you keep that awareness up?
Well, like for me, I didn't start with a company that had much of a safety culture. So for me, I learned it from the competition scene.
Yeah.
So just seeing a true professional at do what they're good at, the climbing. Um, uh, yeah, that just really made it easy for me. Like they made it look
Yeah.
cool to be a professional.
Yeah, you make a really good point, Joshua, and I think that you need to consider yourself as one of the very lucky ones. And there's many out there that do get their start at a company that adheres to, you know, the first company I was at, it was a little startup. I was part of a lawn business, and the guy that was hired to run the tree department was a real Shigo fan, and almost to a fault because he was such a Shigo fan that we didn't use spurs at all, because spurs were bad. That was just flat out, they weren't allowed. So I spent the first 3 years at this company, and we didn't top trees, so I learned a lot of good things, but I never was allowed to use spurs. So I just figured spurs were bad, which did actually in the long run end up making me a little better
Yeah.
climber. But when I got to another company, I was trained in using spurs, and I was kind of appalled at first, but that was a real limitation in removal. That was made a big difference all of a sudden in a removal situation to be able to use spurs. And but I was a product of my training and my first experience at the company, right? Whereas, and when you make a very very good point, when you're first exposed to arboriculture and it's done correctly, and with all the safety things in place, and that's what you see, then you don't know any different. And I think that is a huge thing.
That first company for about 3 years and they weren't wearing helmets. I'd probably never seen a pair of chaps. And I wasn't touching a chainsaw for the first probably 2 years. I mean, they let me like drag branches to the chipper and, use a hedger. But but yeah, I got to see the flow of jobs and job site efficiencies. Now I will, those bagsters, those like kind of fabric tarps.
Right.
Um and now I will, because of all that experience early on, I won't hesitate to take the opportunity to lay a bagster out before I start whatever it is, a removal. I'll try to, be landing branches in the bagster on a removal, or if we're just hitting some house clearance, I'll try to have it go straight in the bagster rather than picking it up twice. Picking it up once to, just put it straight in the bagster so it's making less of a mess. I have that to credit to my early years, but yeah, no, the no chaps and no helmet. I definitely didn't start
What do you think,
full
Tony? The
PPE.
the beginnings,
I was
like
just
what you see,
inspired early on.
those, like they say, children, your formative years are 0 to 7, right? I mean, is that maybe similar for arborists?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you see a good, your first impressions are the lasting ones, I think sometimes, but it can change. I also think too, there's doing tree work at a high level takes a certain amount of attention to detail and just a willingness to have that attention to detail. Like not everybody can be a good arborist. Just working at heights aside, it's like there's just there's certain attitude that goes into it to be thorough, to get to a certain level that you need. And I think it's not necessarily work ethic. You can have good work ethic and not be an arborist, but there is an attention to detail, a way to, a desire to want to do things better, because it is, more efficiently. That plays a lot into it. Because I've, run into people that get into the industry, they're all fired up, think, oh, this is going to be great, I'm going to make this career. And then a year or two in there, it's like, maybe not. Right? They just don't have that whatever it is that keeps them entertained and keeps them interested in it, so they move on to something else, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Some of the harder conversations I've had with people is how they should not be an arborist. It's like, it's just like you're not willing to dedicate the time and the professional development to get good at this, and what you're gonna do is devote just enough time and energy to get hurt or killed. Is That's what you're gonna do. So just go do something else, right? Go do something else. And they don't like to hear it, but I've had people come back and thank me.
What do you think, Joshua? What what is it in you that's made it, and where did it come from? Is it from growing up and then getting with the right companies? Because you've been at it. How long have you been doing tree work now?
About 12 years. 28 now.
Okay,
I'm 28.
yeah,
Um,
and you're still at it.
yeah. Oh yeah. The competitions help keep keep the energy high. Um, I must have heard Phil Kelly say it very early on. He spent a lot of time around the Michigan competition scene about like the big fish in a small pond. Not that I was by any means, but if you don't get out there and mingle with the other good climbers, then you're just isolated. So the competitions help keep
Mm.
the education and stuff really high. Um, and then like Johnny's episode, how he's like, it's just such a rewarding thing to go and solve the tree puzzle every day. That's a big thing for me.
Yeah.
Just thinking of like I was saying, landing stuff in a bagster first, like just thinking of the most efficient way to go about things on the job.
So how many different companies have you worked at altogether then? Three?
Oh, a bunch. I kind of wasn't stoked on the first company, but any of the other really good guys seemed like they were like far away, like over an hour, and I was still like living with my parents, and so I kind of started contract climbing. Just like I met another climber, Shane Root, who I spent a bunch of years with. We ended up kind of leaving Adam's company, and Shane started his own, and he was using me for like second climber kind of stuff. Adam, grateful for the opportunity, but he had a climber named Dustin Fisher, and Dustin was doing all the climbing, and they weren't really in a position to like train another climber. They sent me up on spikes for the first time in one of the probably the Weaver floating metal D harness, and I learned a Blake's hitch through like Dustin, um, but it was more so through Shane that I learned more of the fundamentals. Um, but I one time through Shane's direction, I put a natural crotch rigging rope uh, through a union, and it must have not been back at the main trunk. It was like out, not out on a limb, but the union it was in was like feet away
Mm-hmm.
from the main trunk. And so there was a bit of leverage going on, and I rigged out a branch again through Shane's like direction and stuff. And I cut that limb, and it dropped down into the branch union, and it tore out. And we were in the vicinity of a house, but it fell and didn't hit anything. And that was like one moment where I was like, all right, cool. Like there's still plenty learning to be done if like it, because it like very much surprised him too. And now you'll very rarely find me rigging off one point. It's usually like a rigging point at the trunk and then redirecting from there. But yeah, that was a moment that stuck out in my head where I'm like, all right, the guy I'm getting direction from is also like surprised by like what's happening right now. Like maybe there's again like more to be learned. So yeah, how many companies? I was with Adam, Shane. Then I kind of bounced around helping some people. At that point, I'd been at it like 5 years or so. So I'd made some contacts. Neil Powers was a big one. I spent a couple years with Neil. Um, Neil introduced me to my friend Joey. Joey really got me like plugged into the climbing community. He ran a Facebook group called My Grove. It was just a recreational tree climbing group in Michigan. So they would try to have meetups every so
Mm.
often and do that. Um, ended up moving out to Maryland, spent a couple years out there, back to Michigan. So that's, I don't know, 5 companies at that point. Go back to Michigan for about 2 years, work with my good friend Mike Frizzell, and yeah, from there, that's when I was working with Mike. That's where I cut down the childhood tree. And then from there, I bumped out to Salt Lake, and I've been with 3 companies out here. Been out here for about 4 years now. So
And are you working as a contractor to them mostly, or an employee?
I've been with this company for about a full year now. Rent a Monkey is where I'm at currently.
Okay. You know, it's interesting as you're sharing there. I was just thinking that your human forest it sounds pretty diverse and spread out, which I think any good forest has a wide range of diversity and multiple connections, and that's why, I like to call this podcast our tagline is the Human Forestry Podcast, and it sounds like you have populated your human forest far and wide, like of Maryland, Michigan to Utah, and you keep mentioning names of people, which to me indicates a connection matters with individuals, and that you learn and nurture those carefully because they're connections that help make you who you are. Is that a fair assessment, or how do you feel about that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, very inspirational people over the years that pointed me in the right direction.
So that's another trait that not everyone has, and some people would say it's just your personality. Where do you think is it just in you that you are the type of person that would seek connection with others and try to learn from others and make the effort? Like you even mentioned about you weren't living where the other climbers were, so you've moved around and put yourself into connect places where you find those connections. What is it in Joshua that makes that something you choose to do?
I don't know. I think I'm like, I can follow others, but I also, not that my way is best. I'll listen to everybody, but I'm like with the tree work, I'm always trying to think of the best way. So if someone knows more than me, I'm gonna be listening, and even if they don't, like I'll, you know, take the good stuff and leave the bad
Hmm.
stuff. Like
Well, it's a pretty good attitude to have,
always the student.
and not everyone has that attitude. And I think that's actually getting back to what happens in arboriculture from an accident perspective. I think that is also part of it. I think how this industry works is having some honesty and open mindedness and some willingness to do things different, like HOW, honesty, open mindedness, and willingness. Really, with those 3 elements, you're well on your way. And not everybody has those or is willing to practice those traits, right?
Yep, not being open-minded to other better ways and willing to try different techniques.
Exactly. And then being honest about the fact that you're just not going to do it because you don't want to, or because whatever it is, right? It was one of the things that always impressed me, well, about Tim and about Tim's training. You mentioned Tim Ard, and you watched his videos and you listened to his podcast, and unfortunately Tim's passed away now. But wasn't Tim in season 2 or 3, Tony? I can't remember where he is in our. But anyways, he'd always introduce, and I took training from him, and then I did talk with Tim quite a bit, and I miss him. But I stole one of his techniques. Well, I stole lots of his techniques, but one from training was that he would always introduce a topic or introduce a class almost by talking about fishing, which it's pretty common to find outdoor type people in the tree world, and almost everybody would relate to fishing. Or he also would sometimes talk about a junk drawer. That you got this junk drawer at home full of bent wrenches and stuff, and all this stuff that you used to put a barbecue together one time, or your kid's bike, and you just throw stuff in there, and everyone would kind of laugh, and because everybody's got something like that, right? And he would say that, like, all that stuff, if someone went into that junk drawer and threw it out and they cleaned it up, like, you'd be a bit upset, right? Because you know what all those little things are for, and you're just saving it because it might just be something you need one day. And he said, and he'd get people thinking about it, and then he would say, that's exactly what I'm here to do, to just add stuff to the drawer or put stuff in your mental toolbox or in your mental tackle box. You're out fishing and someone's catching and you're wondering what they're using. You don't you try to see what they got, and if they're using something you're not using, you put the hook, you take the hook off your line and you put a different hook on. But the hook you took off, you put it back in the tackle box. You don't throw it away, right? Because it was work. You had it on there for a reason at one point. He said that's tools and techniques, and he said I'm here to teach you different ways to fish, or put another piece of something into your kit. And he would always say this too. He would say, "Don't believe a word I say," which I was just stunned the first time I heard him say that in a class, and I'm like, "What? Don't believe a word I say. Try it for yourself, and if it works." And you find it works for you and you like it, then it goes in the toolbox. And if it doesn't, then you can put it in the toy box. And that's kind of what you're getting at. Yeah. And it was a really, and I never forgot that. And I've, oh man, I've used that story so many times. I mean, Tony's heard me say it more than once. And here I am saying it again.
I use it. No, I use it as well, or versions of it, right? The old mental toolbox, and I've personalized it a little bit. I have a couple tools around here that I've modified to, adjust things like tools. Like I think I have like a 17/32 or something ridiculous, like Craftsman wrench that I had to file thin so it fits in, so I can adjust a blade on a joiner. And I'm like, that's what it's like when I need that tool, you need it. There's no other tool that will do the job. I'm certainly not throwing that tool away. I don't whip it out every time, and that's how I kind of relate like some of the more, I wouldn't say complex, but the more esoteric cuts we make, like the key notch for hazard and danger. As a professional, if I've made that notch 5 times in my career, 3 times probably just to see if I could do it. Twice, but the 2 times I needed it, there was no other way to do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and the learning never ends, right? You keep filing this data and these tools and this equipment into, and I don't know, most arborists find it really hard to throw away their stuff, like old stuff. Old harnesses hanging around and beaners and things, you gotta hang on to that. I mean, that goes right back to old climbing lines. That's your rigging line now. We got to recycle that thing, right? But that's not a good practice. Well, at least use it to tie down loads on the trailer. Yep. So, you mentioned that you're working today, and then we heard the saw in the background, which I love. I think it's the first time we had a chainsaw in the background on the show yet. I think, but you're running right now. You've got the grapple with the saw on the end, right?
Yeah, it's an 85-yard grapple truck with, it's about 32 and a half feet, I think they say, of like extension. And it's got the claw and I think it's like a 32-inch chainsaw bar. So
Wow.
yeah, it can grab and
So
cut all
how
its
do
own
you
stuff. So.
like that? Like that those are becoming pretty popular, and as a climber, I guess it only has a certain reach, right? So at some point, you still got to climb.
I've ran, so we have two other grapple trucks that have the buckets rather than the claw and chainsaw bar. I've ran the buckets. I haven't ran the cutting one yet. That one's new to us. We've had it for about maybe 2 weeks. It's still pretty new. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, here in Salt Lake, it's kind of the perfect spot for it. We can get it to a lot of trees. We can throw mats down to get it closer.
Yeah.
Um, it wouldn't be ideal out east because the branches don't start until 70 feet in the air. But for our trees that are topping out around 70-ish feet, that that 30-foot arm can reach up there, and it can be kind of cutting the top and it's not reaching to the very, very top, but it's reaching enough to where it can safely make the cut, and the tree doesn't need to be climbed anymore. So it's definitely saving my energy for more of the backyard stuff where that tree can't access it, or the or the pruning for sure. Just being so I don't have to climb every single thing. It's really awesome for reaching over fences too. I think every day, like, oh man, if we had to like get this material through the fence into a chipper, it would be a lot more job time than we can just drive it up to the fence and reach right over the fence, and we're not walking through tight drag paths, and it's really, really awesome for the area
Hmm.
that we're in.
Yeah, whenever a tool or a technique makes your job safer, easier, more efficient, then it's usually pretty, well, it gets a lot of use. So, what would you say is you mentioned Johnny talking about how much it's so rewarding solving the tree puzzle every day. What is it about the tree work that keeps you coming back? Do you think can you put it into words or describe for our audience what is it that keeps Joshua hitting the turn the alarm off instead of hitting snooze and getting in the truck and putting the saddle on every day?
Just such a dynamic, ever changing environment to be in. I When I was a senior in high school, I got into concert rigging, like arena rigging, hanging like the lights
Oh
and
yeah,
speakers in the ceiling. So that was harness work, but we were kind of walking around on beams, and it was less of like rope work. And I ended up getting a Sprat certification, just like a rope access kind of
uh huh,
certification. But um,
yeah.
yeah, the field I was in, we weren't doing a whole lot of rope work, so didn't do a whole lot with that. But um, yeah, just the I don't love our company does a fair bit of removals. I don't love going around and cutting everything down. My homie Dustin was like, "Oh yeah, that saw truck is gonna help you deforest Utah." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, we're cutting down dead trees too." But but um yeah, just working around, just helping the trees get along with the people, and vice versa, keeping the
Yeah.
properties safe. With I really enjoyed the rope work and the rigging, so um anytime I can make less cuts and set up a little bit of ropes to hang the branches for me, I will take that opportunity, and just less risk that way. Typically, I'm not throwing five different pieces and hoping they don't bounce. It's all just coming down in one cut on the rope. So yeah, just yeah, it's very satisfying. Just working on all these different properties, and um, yeah, ideally it's for a nice prune that we can go back to and climb the tree multiple more times. But if it is a technical removal and we can get it down smoothly and efficiently and safely, of course, then that's also very rewarding too. Not break anything.
You mentioned that that you do removals, but it's not necessarily your most favorite part, just because you'd rather. And I like the way you said about helping trees and the people get along. Because excuse me, I really think that is a major part of being an arborist, and certainly in the residential world, right, where you're trying to balance what's best for the tree with also what's best for the owner of the tree. I suppose you could say it's hard. I don't know if people can really own a tree, but I guess we do own trees. But
I think Phil said the person who has careship of the tree.
yeah, yeah, careship, yeah, and it is there is you can't just I've been guilty of this myself where I want to do what I know is best and I don't care what the customer wants because that's not good for the tree. And there is a limit, right? But it's finding that balance and being able to educate someone on why they shouldn't just cut the top off every 5 years, right? And why how to what's better for the tree, but yet meet the needs that they have. And that is, I think, the true art and science of arboriculture. Really, certainly of practicing tree care in the residential environment. Like you got utility trimmers, their objective's a little different, right? They're pruning the wires from the trees, right? We're trying to prune the trees and help the people understand what needs to be done.
If done right, it was there before you, and it should be there when you're gone too.
Yep.
If everything's done appropriately and taken care of, you're not doing landscaping and destroying all the roots, saying while at the same time saying I love this tree for the shade.
Yeah. Yeah. There's that constant friction and or misunderstanding between the land scraper and the arborist.
Yeah, out here we have a lot of uh renovating going on, a lot of building, a lot of construction just in general in the Salt Lake area that we're at. So yeah, it's all we're always dealing with a home extension or a new house going in, and they're tearing up the. We just had one yesterday where the lady was like, "I picked these. I picked this spot to build the house around because I love these trees." And I'm like, "Well, it looks like they're being pretty aggressive around the roots, like of the trees. So just keep an eye on that."
Well, it's like Shai always used to say, ignorance of tree biology is the single greatest problems trees face today, or still face today, or all and that's really what it is. They just don't know. It might be getting back to the accidents in arboriculture that maybe the single, the ignorance of trees and physics is maybe the single biggest cause. But ignorance is the common theme there, right? People don't realize
Oh
what they're
yeah,
doing. I
yeah.
didn't go near the trunk of the tree. I didn't touch any branches. It's like, yeah, well, all you have to do is hold someone's nose and mouth shut, and you don't have to do much else, and you're going to have a significant impact on them.
It's easy for sales guys to sell removals, but like if when it comes to like actual like tree science stuff, sometimes they can be guessing, depending on the company. But yeah, I mean, it's easy to go around and put a number on a removable, but
Wow, that are you going to open the sales guy can?
oh gosh. I love them if they've done like the tree work, like if the sales guy who's like knows how the job flow goes, then like love them to death. Cool, all the respect. It's just difficult when you've got guys like putting numbers who like don't know what it's like to get all that material through the fence or whatever it be.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Tony, do you find that? I find it weird because a lot of, like, I remember I've been at tree services in the past where, they'll hire a salesman, right? And they're salesmen. They're one guy was selling, I don't know, cars or furniture or something, and then they hired him to sell tree work. Like we need a salesman because you can't do work and be doing sales. Like so the, and I was like, how the heck? And it was, oh my goodness, like, and he did sell work because he was able to talk to people and so on. But man, that was the first time I really experienced that, and it was I never seen a company that thought it was okay just to hire a salesman, not a salesperson that had no. But have you experienced that, Tony, in the companies you've been with, or with your brother's company?
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate that most of the arborist reps that I've had to work with consistently have been good arborists. Not all of them have necessarily been production or in the field arborists. They might have, not necessarily that they have done the works. Most have, but some haven't. But I've been fortunate. But you do occasionally run into the person is better at sales than they're at tree work, which is fine too. So I think it's important that every company have sort of somebody in the middle, whether it be a safety director or somebody like that, that can kind of balance the two. Because I just had a situation like one of the sales arborist reps, we call them, not necessarily a sales rep, but they represent trees, right?
Right, right,
Barn.
right.
But he was basically, they had a small dead branch in contact with an energized line, and it's like, it's, he just wanted to get the tree out, but it's like you just have to kind of balance that. Yeah, can we just pull it off and do it safely? Yeah, but what message are we sending to the crews there? So it's, you have to have that. So I find it important to have that person in the middle that can be like, yeah, that's a great price, but he's really small up in that tree. I think it's a little bit bigger than a 60. It's a little bit bigger than a 35-foot maple that you had on the job card. It's more like a 75-foot maple. Kind of, it's good. I've been fortunate that I haven't had, but you always have to balance that too. And it's I think sometimes before you over criticize arborist reps or sales reps, you have to do their job for a little bit too. It's hard. It's not easy to
Yeah.
put that number on it, right?
I was terrible because, especially when it was a tree that was cool or a tree that I liked, or if I liked the person, I'd get talking with them and then my price would just incrementally drop inadvertently.
Yep. Yeah.
I was not good at. I
You're
would.
like, I just
I
want
could
to be
sell.
here.
I could sell a ton of work, but would never make any money. I'd get in trouble all the time when I would, and to the point where at the one company, they were just like, "You can't do estimates. You're not allowed." After I bid a $5,000 job that should have been 10, but it was such a cool site and trees that I figured we could do it in a couple days, but it took like a week. And by after the first day, I was going, "What were you thinking?" But these are nice trees, man. Isn't this fun? That was my problem.
We want to be here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Funny. As we were talking, and I thought of Shigo's quote about ignorance of tree biology. I realized, Tony, that since I went away, it's been a couple episodes. We forgot about our new tradition. We haven't done it for a couple episodes, and so at least we haven't. At least I thought of it, and I think we should resurrect our. Are you familiar with this book, Joshua?
I need to get it. Yeah. Yeah. The pithy points. Yep.
Yeah, it's good, and I'm really suddenly realizing and bummed out by it that I think 3 guests we've missed now this season, but it's never too late to start over, or not start over, but to get back on track. So there is 950 pithy points, and there happens to be how many are there here? There's 78 of them that are color slides. Okay, now, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Anyways, if you pick a number that has both, then I'll do 2. So in other words, if it's a number under 78, there'll be 2. But there is 950 altogether. So what number would you select between 1 and 950?
Let's do 65 for the color.
Okay, 65 for the color plate. 62. Here we go. Okay. So the photo is this, and now our audience won't be able to see this because it's a we don't use video. So it looks like it's a beach, or yeah, I think it's a beach. It is. I just read it now, and it has a bunch of wrapping all over the trunks. So this is tree pithy point, tree picture pithy point, number 65 for Joshua. Looking at the picture of a beech tree where all of the limbs are wrapped in burlap, literally, and it's a big tree. If you think the last treatment was a crime, consider this one, where several people spent several days wrapping this dying beech. It was dying because shallow roots were killed in attempts to establish a new lawn. And they wrapped all the trunks with burlap in an attempt to alleviate what was happening underground. It gets back to that ignorance statement.
Oh yeah, get rid of the grass. What's your forest look like? It's not full of grass.
Exactly. Correct. Everyone, you need to get your head out of your grass. It's a joke. All right. So between 1 and 950 now. Or 9, yeah, 950.
Let's go 900.
Ooh. Oh, I've never had anyone go that high, Tony. Here we go. 900. Okay, here we are. Tree pithy point number 900. Wood characteristics start in the living tree. Wood characteristics start in the living tree. Pithy point number 900. You know, I don't know if this is a coincidence or not, but as I was looking for 900, I stumbled over tree picture number 77. Pithy point, tree picture pithy point. And it's kind of ironic because I think this is really the one that's most apropos for this session. And maybe the way this has gone, it happened because look at the picture.
Oh, yeah, all right. Yeah, that's meant to be. What's it say?
You see that? It's very similar to the logo of your company shirt. Like it's ironically similar. It's really bizarre. So it shows a picture of a monkey holding a chainsaw, and you are working for Rent a Monkey, right? And you have a monkey on your shirt right now. So I think this is what was meant to be. True picture pithy point number 77, a cartoon monkey holding a cartoon chainsaw. This is where some people, or where some tree people are today. I am quick to say that there are an increasing number of exceptions, or people who know it is time to use our minds as well as our muscles. Hard work will always be a part of arboriculture. The marketplace demands better, faster, and less expensive service. I remain optimistic.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks, Shago and Dwayne.
Yeah, that's from Shigo. That's pretty cool.
I didn't have those numbers pre-picked out. I was just like, give me one that you said the pictures get 2. So I'm like, I'll get 2 out of it. But yeah, you found that one. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I know it's interesting. And while I was looking for it, it jumped out at me because the monkey face is almost identical to the one on your shirt. It's wild. Well, I know that you're on. Oh yeah, I know that you're on the job and that your boss has given you time, and it's been an hour. So I want to be sensitive to his generosity and not overstay it. And so I really want to thank you for being our first fan guest. And I guess we can officially throw this out there. If you want to be on the show and would like to contribute or have something you'd like to share and tell us about the first time you had a connection with a tree or trees, just Tony and I can be found on Instagram or on WhatsApp or various other. I'm not going to put our number out, Tony. They can find us by hook or crook. But Joshua found us, so anybody can find
Tony,
us.
I looked for yours.
The easiest way is through the Instagram page, right?
What's Tony's on Instagram?
I had an Instagram page, but I had one for a while and then I stopped using it because I found it every time I got on, I just got angry. And I don't need things to make me angry in my life, so I stopped.
Sure. No worries.
But you can connect if you just message on Tree Actions, Instagram, because if you look Tree Actions, we are on Instagram, and we'll get those messages too.